The plan today is to work on replacing the lifters in my NA Miata. If you've got an old Miata, you've probably heard lifter tick before. I got a video of mine right here. And there's a bunch of different theories as to how to fix it, but I just decided I'd buy some new lifters. So I bought them. They sat on the shelf for a while because my lifter tick would kind of come and go. For the most part, it would stay away once the car was on, and by the time I got to the end of the street, the lifter tick had gone away. And then eventually just kind of fixed itself. I guess it was just a few regular oil changes and driving the car regularly for about 10,000 miles. The lifter tick just went away. But I already had the box sitting on the shelf, and one day when I ran out of other projects, I figured, you know what, why not? Let's just replace the lifters in here. I've got them sitting around anyways. And now it ticks worse than it ever did. So I tried driving. I looked up some stuff. Some places online recommended, oh, just drive it, break them in. It's not hurting anything. After a couple hundred miles, they'll probably fill up with oil. Well, the sound has not gotten any better. It's not gotten any worse. But it sounds terrible, and I've already driven about 250 miles with these lifters this way, a few trips around town, a few commutes back and forth to work, and just no luck. And I've tried hammering on it. I've tried driving it light. So I did some listening. It sounds like most of the ticking is coming from the driver's side, and luckily I kept all my perfectly good original lifters over there in a box. Or not in a box, they're still submerged in oil, actually, because I only did this a few weeks ago. So I'm going to pull the intake cam out. If I can see something that's obviously wrong, I think I've got two in there that are ticking. One is like kind of coming and going like every 10 seconds or so, and the other one is just constantly tap 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 tapping. It sounds like they're both coming from the driver's side. So if I can't find two very obviously not functioning lifters, I'm just going to replace all of them. I'll just take my old ones and take them apart, clean them up, slap those back in there because I know they worked fine, and just send it from there, and hopefully that fixes my problem. But you'll get to find out with me. So to get to the lifters on these, we need to get up under the camshafts. So to start, we're basically going to do everything you need to do to get to your timing belt. And there's plenty of way better quality videos around the internet of people doing timing belts on these. Check those out. But just briefly, we'll be removing the under tray, draining the coolant, removing the radiator. We'll be removing the intake. I just got this shiny new strut bar that I insisted on installing, knowing I have to take it right back off because I'm brilliant. So I got to take that off. We got to take the valve cover off. That also means we got to pull the spark plug wires and the spark plugs. And that's just so when we're turning the engine over by hand during the whole timing and retiming process and all this other kind of fun stuff, you're not fighting against the compression of the engine. There's somewhere for that air to get out, so it'll be easier to turn over. Removing the timing covers, removing the timing belt, the cam gears, and then you'll pop the intake cams out. Or the camshafts. You'll pop the camshafts out. So I'll just set the camera up, hopefully get a good, quick time lapse of all this. I've got to put this thing up on 2x4s to get a jack under it. And yeah, I'll talk to you more when we get to the interesting part. And we just got the valve cover off. You take a look here at the cams. They all look pretty good. Yeah, so no signs of obvious damage or excessive wear from lifters or anything like that. Everything looks good as far as I can tell. I'm not a machinist or an engineologist, but looks healthy enough for me to button back up. So we know at least, we didn't cause any damage with that excessive tapping, which, my research told me that anyways, but it's always good to see and double check. So from here, we got to finish removing these timing covers. I'm going to leave that ATI super damper on. It's kind of a pain in the butt to install, and I need a new bolt technically to do it right, and I don't feel like doing that. So I can pull that cover up off the bottom without pulling that damper off. Got to pull the water pump pulley off, like I said, these timing covers, timing belt, all the fun stuff that goes along with that. So spark plugs next, and keep on moving. For the lower timing cover, one of these bolts is a little bit longer. That's the one that goes just above and to the right, above and to the right a little bit of where the water pump pulley sits at. Compared to the other two bolts that I just pulled out of the bottom, here's a shorter one. Shorter one and longer one. So this one goes above and right of the water pump pulley. So now I got to turn this engine over by hand. And a big issue that I run into, and this may be the same with people with stock sway bars, but I've got the Fly Miata sway bars on mine, and the thickness of those keeps me from being able to get a wrench really in there on the nose of the crankshaft easily. So I usually give it a shot, wind up having to give up and drop my sway bar down. It's only 4 volts, it's not the end of the world, but it's just one extra step. And down inside of this bucket are all 16 of my original lifters out of the engine. I pulled a good handful of them out knowing that they all worked correctly as a reference, and I squeezed the plunger in them, and I can't get any movement, so they're all stiff, and that's what you want. So hopefully, best case scenario, when I pull this intake cam out, I will find 2 very obviously not correct ones that either still have the ability to plunge up and down, or the plunger is obviously set too high or too low in it. And then I can just take them apart, clean them up, see if I can remedy the problem, and if not, I can just stick the old lifters back in there. Normally, you want to put the old lifters back underneath the cam that they, the specific lobe they came out from. But I'm hoping if I take them apart and clean them and put them back in the engine, it should be fine and kind of reset their height. So yeah, moving on. And just a quick note too, before we start getting into removing this cam, first you want to start with the end cap, and then if you were doing the exhaust cam, same thing, the end cap, and then the cam angle sensor at the back for the 1.8. For the 1.6, I believe the cam angle sensor is on the intake cam. But yeah, so you remove the end ones first, and then you're going to start with the front ones, and you're going to go outside, inside, go to the back, outside, inside, and then you go to the middle one here, outside, inside, and then the middle one towards the back, outside, inside. And same thing goes for the exhaust cam if you wanted to take that off. So again, removing the end bolts, and then you'll start with the first cap here, so outside, or outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside. So yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna do the intake cam. If I'm really confident that I found 2 that are incorrect there, I'm gonna button it back up and hope for the best. They both sounded like the noise was, or all the noise I heard sounded like it was coming from the intake side. But if I don't find 2 lifters that are very obviously not correct, I'm just gonna go ahead and bite the bullet and redo the exhaust side as well, because I'd rather just do it once and do it right. Well, I didn't find any obvious problems. I went ahead and replaced all the ones on the intake side. I'm going to go ahead and redo all the ones on the exhaust side. I've got all the original lifters cleaned up, took them apart, cleaned them up, put fresh oil in them, plunged them up and down until all the air was out of them. Those should be good. They're ready to go in. Like I said, already did the intake side. That's already bolted down. I just need to retorque this front bolt. And I just pulled the caps off the exhaust cam. So it's ready to come on out. And I'll show you the, at least in principle, the system I'm using over here to keep everything organized. It's my passenger seat. You don't have to remove that to do this, surprisingly. So I cam laid in the back, front is front, back is back. And over here, I got them laid out in order. But if for some reason you get any of these caps mixed up, if you look really closely at them, it's going to be hard for me to show you. Maybe if I bring you over here with some light. It says E2 right there on the top. E2. And that arrow indicates forwards. So that's the second cap on the exhaust cam. And with the arrow indicating forwards, there you have your front cam seal. Number 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the last one is your cam angle sensor cap, again, for 1.8. So that's going to be on the intake cam on the 1.6s. So that's out. Those lifters, you just pull them out with a magnet. They slip right out. Getting new ones in, you got to make sure you have it lined up really straight, but it'll drop right in. So there's no need to force it. Don't push on them at all. The old ones slide right up, the new ones drop right in, and if it's not dropping in, you don't have it lined up right. So I'm going to get to work removing these, getting the new old ones put back in, rebuttoning this cam up, and then get the engine retimed, all that fun stuff. All right. That very front one on the exhaust side came out still plunging. That leads me to believe that this one might be the problem child. So that one never filled up with oil to stiffen up the way this one did, which there's like a tiny, tiny bit of play in this, but not a whole lot. This one's moving up and down a good bit. So, hoping that one was our problem. Like I said, I was hearing two. Oh. Yeah, so I pushed that one and it just collapsed in on itself. I don't know how well you can see that, but if I push on that, there you see it squirting all the oil out. That was 100% not functioning properly. So everything I said about hearing things on the intake side, I was just objectively wrong with that. And I'm really glad I chose to follow this through and do it properly. That is no bueno. Odd. I wonder how that happened, because I tested them all before I put them in here, so I wonder if there was something in there tore up. Well, out of curiosity, I had to take them apart and figure out what the issue is. And this is kind of the messy area where I was taking apart and cleaning the lifters earlier. So on the top, we have a lifter that, again, it was a new aftermarket lifter that came out of the engine. And that one seemed to be functioning properly, at least just by feeling and looking at it. And on the bottom was the one where that plunger in the middle would just compress down all the way. And I seem to have found the issue. So these are built a little bit differently than the OEM ones that are in the car. And basically, this piece here at the end, there's a spring that sits down in there, and then in here is some sort of check valve, I believe. There's a little ball bearing in there, and you can see there at the very top, there's a path for oil to go around it. And like I said, inside of that little cap in the middle, there's a steel ball bearing. Here, that cap is separated, and that ball bearing was out and playing around. And this spring has pushed and broken in half. You can see, I could untangle them from each other, but it does nothing for me. So normally that spring would just sit down on the bottom there, just like so. This would sit on top of that. This would then go in there into the bucket like this. So the part that's looking up at the camera now is normally sitting down. And again, this is the bottom of the bucket, so that would look up and right on the cam lobes. That couldn't happen here. With that piece broken off from here, there was nothing controlling the oil flow in and out, and the spring just got broken, and that bucket was just destroyed. There's no way that would have ever worked. And I don't know if it was shipped that way or if I did something wrong when I got them. All the videos I saw online, they got the new lifters, they took them all apart, submerged them in oil, got all the air out. But when I took them out, they were all firm. So maybe I should just take them out of the package and throw them in the engine without fiddling with them. I don't know. I can't 100% blame the manufacturer here because I don't know. I'm not educated enough about this to say one way or the other. I just know that this is my problem. 100% this was my problem. So we're putting the OEM ones back in the car. And I guess the lesson here, if you really want to avoid this story altogether, just buy the lifters from Mazda. They're expensive, but we're talking about a part that sits inside of your motor, and it gets all the stress and heat cycling and all those kinds of things that is experienced by the inside of an engine. Maybe that's not the kind of thing you want to cheap out on like I did. And maybe you'll learn the hard way, or maybe you can just take it from me and learn the easy way. All right, and now everything is put back together, I believe. Aside from a couple things that I can do while I'm letting the system warm up and burp and everything. I got a fan back there pushing the exhaust back out of the shop, all the fun stuff, well-ventilated area, yada yada. First start up on new lifters, expect to hear some noise. These are, full of oil and everything. Expect to hear a little bit of clacking. Most of it should go away pretty soon. Some of it may last a few minutes. We're gonna see, but fingers crossed, whatever noises we hear go away quickly. That will tell me that I did this correctly. And if I did this wrong, I might kind of just be SOL and to the point where I need to pay somebody else to do it, but that would really suck. So anyways, fingers crossed, let's start her up. All right, that's more like it. I forgot to tighten the pulley for my water pump, and it was rattling all over the place, making that awful noise. So again, it sounds like you got one lifter taking a little bit, get that a little bit to settle down, maybe get some oil in it like it's supposed to. I can deal with one lifter ticking compared to the sound I was hearing a little while ago. And one of these lifters did usually take a little bit to, kind of clear itself out before. So I'm gonna get this cooling system burped and see what happens.